Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Virus, also known as Day of Resurrection, a Japanese apocalyptic sci-fi drama from 1980 that was directed by Kinji Fukasaku, the man who would later direct Battle Royale. I did do a top 10 list of Fukasaku films a few years ago, and Virus placed quite high on that list. And I've been wanting to review this film for ages, but its availability is pretty spotty in order to dedicate like a separate review video to it. However, it has recently been made available on Tubi.com, so that gave me the opportunity to watch it for a second time and review it. Now, the following plot synopsis was paraphrased from Wikipedia. So this is based on a Sakyo Komatsu novel. And the film stars an international ensemble cast featuring Japanese and international actors. So you got Masao Kusakari, Sonny Chiba, George Kennedy, Robert Vaughn, Chuck Connors, Olivia Hussey, Edward James Olmos, Glenn Ford, and Henry Silva. Now, on its release, at least according to some websites, this film was the most expensive Japanese film ever made. So, not entirely sure of that, but that's what the internet says, so it must be true. So this is the plot for you. In 1982, a shady transaction is occurring between an East German scientist, Dr. Krause, and a group of Americans involving a substance known as MM88. And MM88 is a deadly virus created accidentally by an American geneticist, and it amplifies the potency of any other virus or bacterium it comes into contact with. And the Americans recover the virus sample, which was stolen from a lab in the US the year before. But the virus is accidentally released after the plane transporting it crashes, and it creates a pandemic initially known as the Italian flu. Now, this is very much an ensemble film, as I said, and it does a good job of like bouncing between all these different characters in many locations around the world as these events just kind of spiral out of control. Now, sometimes in Japanese productions, non-Japanese actors come off pretty badly in terms of performance. Now, some of the English dialogue is a bit stiff at times in this film, but I thought it was pretty good overall. I kind of like the performances in this. Certainly better than some other Japanese productions in terms of international cast. I mean, Robert Vaughn and Henry Silva are particularly interesting characters in this. Vaughn plays like a political opponent to the President of the United States, but he's in talks with him in like his core kind of group of not confidants, but core group of people that he consults while this pandemic is going on. And Silva plays an emotionally unstable leader of the military, one of the secondary leaders of the military. And I think they have some good conflict in the White House. I enjoy their dynamic. Now, the main focus of Virus is obviously the spread of this deadly pandemic, which is pretty realistic, really, at least when compared to a lot of other films that do this type of thing. And it's even creepy at times, especially near the end. And you can definitely feel the impact of this apocalyptic event because the film does a good job of emphasizing the spread of this virus throughout the world population. However, one of the things that interested me the most about this film is that it infuses in some real-life dilemmas while things kind of spiral out of control. And there's new and different challenges that are introduced to the human characters at different points in the film. So, for example, near the midpoint, there's a discussion involving the role of women in this society, okay? That could be considered controversial, but given the situation, I mean, it's tough to figure out a solution. And I'm not going to tell you, because I'm not going to tell you what happens, but when you get dropped into that scene, it's kind of thought-provoking, because it's like, man, what do we do here? You know what I mean? Like, what do we do? Like, no answer is a good answer. And those are like the situations I like to see in a film like this. The solution isn't a simple one. And you start thinking to yourself, what should governments do in this situation and stuff like that. I found the dialogue exchange in that scene to be pretty compelling and memorable as well. There's another, like, non-virus threat that emerges during the second half of the film that makes the situation even more dangerous. It's a little bit contrived at how it's created, but it really gives the film another dimension, and also an excuse to ramp up the thrills a little bit. Again, I did not see that coming. So there's some stuff that happens in this film that you're not going to see in a lot of other, pandemic films, and that's what makes it memorable. So despite the fact that, this has a pretty lengthy runtime, about 2.5 hours, it does a really good job, I think, of holding the viewer's interest because it continuously introduces these new problems, some of which are directly impacted by the pandemic and others maybe not so much. And the characters have to deal with all this stuff. As an added bonus, we get some nice shots of Antarctica and the ocean at times, just to give you a heads up. So there are a lot of things to like about this film. But there's one thing to understand before you go into it if you decide to watch this. This is not the type of film that you watch to have fun with its virus theme. It's not like Train to Busan or Kingdom or even the Ebola syndrome, all of which I've reviewed fairly recently, right? Well, Train to Busan I reviewed a few years ago, but the other two I reviewed recently. And, those films and TV shows take their premise and kind of exaggerate it and ramp it up to the point where it's just entertaining to watch. Virus, on the other hand, is a pretty downbeat and depressing pandemic film, so be mindful of that before going into it. And it's pretty slow-paced. Because I can imagine some people might not want to watch a movie like this right now, given current events. But, when I rewatched it, I really enjoyed it, especially the ending. It's a pretty interesting film, and it carves out its own identity, because you don't see a whole lot of movies that do this type of thing. You know what I mean? The premise is generic, but what it does with it, I think, is pretty creative. Now, this film does seem to have its fair share of haters on the internet. Some people really hate this film. Not that many people have seen it, so the sample size is kind of small. But one reason for that is I think that the uncut Japanese version runs at about 2.5 hours, while the United States version, which was more widely available for a while, cut out about 50 minutes of runtime. And it landed at like 1 hour and 45 minutes or something like that. So they shaved off like 50 minutes. And everybody was watching that version for a while, which I didn't even watch that version. I can only imagine that it's not as good as the full-length version. So do not watch the cut version of this film, which is the one that's on Amazon. So do not watch this on Amazon. Watch the uncut version that's on Tubi. All right, that's key. And I think some of the criticisms of this film online kind of are generated because people are watching the cut version. But still, it's not a perfect film. Outside of the occasional, like, English language, I guess, stiffness a little bit in the performances at times, there are some unrealistic elements at play, a few of which I'm not going to bring up because they're spoilers. But there were some events in this film that probably would not have happened in real life. But the film overall is so interesting to watch, in my opinion, that, I was not immediately taken out of the film due to some of the unrealistic elements. I only thought about those things, like, after the film ended. So that's just something to keep in mind. I think Virus is one of Fukasaku's better films. I would be really interested in hearing other people's opinions about this one because not a lot of people have seen it. Kind of flies under the radar. But I do feel, I get the feel that it's a bit of a divisive film. So, anytime there's a divisive film, it's always interesting to hear people's opinions on it. So if you've seen it or you decide to watch it, let me know what you think. And remember, watch the uncut version on Tubi. And as always, we'll see you next time.